Hi everyone, welcome to SaaSBoomi BTS Special Edition podcast, and I have a very interesting guest today, Pranay Desai. I'll do a quick introduction before I say hi to him. So Pranay Desai, before he moved to the dark side of the SaaS investor side, he used to work with me in Freshworks for a very long time. He's been from the early days of Freshworks and played different roles from being in CEO office to managing enterprise marketing. And finally, he was the director of growth marketing. And welcome, Pranay. So there's a lot of interesting stories which you're going to discuss today. Welcome to SaaSBoomi Behind the Scenes podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Arvind. Good to be here. And of course, we have a long history, so I'm sure it's going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. So I'm gonna not waste any more time and quickly put you in the spot, right? So you are one of those guys who have seen the journey in different eras, right? From the early stage when the company is very small to company till the company goes to IPO and seen the later stages of company. So I want to quickly ask you this question of like how was it back then building a SaaS company back in 2010 to how is it now to building a SaaS company in like 2022 so after pandemic and things? What do you see different now?
Yeah, so I think just for context, I joined Freshworks in around 2014 when we were at like roughly 5 million ARR, was there from 5 to 350 million. So didn't see the 1 to 5 journey there, but obviously working with a lot of founders now who are at the 0 to 1 and 1 to 5 stage. So I think differences today are two or threefold, right? One is I think the market is far more competitive than it used to be. And like too many people have woken up to the idea of making money in SaaS, right? Because software is such a high quality, high margin business. So I think a lot more competition. And even when recently I was in the US for SaaSter and all, so every category had at least 10 different vendors presenting, right? So far more competitive, so harder for a founder to break out in the category. And I guess it's also become far more aggressive, right? Where earlier it used to be a standard that you go from 1 to 100 million in 6 or 7 years. 7 years was actually considered best in class. Today, companies are doing it in 2, 3, 4 years, right? So Deal did it in 1.5 years. I think there's companies like Wiz in security, which got to $30 million in 18 months. So I think just most companies or most categories, people are far more aggressive and far more competitive. So I think just figuring out how to sort of be an early category leader, how to break out, and then how to move fast, build some kind of distribution advantage and win that particular market, just the dynamic has changed, right? And probably naturally leads to sort of more founders need to think a lot more about GTM and not just about building a great product, right? I think that's the big shift.
I think you said it very right. In fact, in one of the SaaSBoomi, I think Sridhar Vembu also touched this point briefly. Like back in like 20 or 25 years back, building product was tougher. We didn't have AWS and like ready to make plug-in products or something. Today, 2 or 3 engineers in a garage can build a product, but every industry is crowded. Like there is already somebody who would have thought about this problem statement and has been building, and the keyword cost has gone up. Like it is right now, GTM has become fairly tougher. I think building product has become fairly easier, right? I think uh, that is very important in this areas. I can't agree with you more. So which brings me to a different question, right? Like in those days, I remember Google AdWords. We were bidding for $1, like less than $1 for Google AdWords and things like that. So traditional lead gen methods were cheaper back then, right? Like lead gen was much cheaper. Today it's become very very expensive. Like what is your like hack if you were to give a hack for your younger self or anybody who's starting company now, like where should they optimize for cost? Where should they focus for lead gen?
No, I think on marketing, I think there's two aspects to it, right? One is be ahead of the curve in terms of finding new and interesting distribution channels. And I'll bring this to life with examples. And the second one I would say is be contrarian to the market, right? Now, I guess when Zoho and early days of Freshworks, when we were very heavy on digital demand, uh, not too many people were taking digital demand very seriously, right? And if I have to call out, like in the 90s, enterprise marketers had two tactics: hold an event and buy a billboard, right? There were two ways to get to people. But then in the 2000s, when Google search, SEO came along, Google advertising came along, people started getting onto that wave, right? And marketing became very sort of performance and demand driven, and it went from a creative domain to an analytical and math domain, right? And then if I think about the companies which have made it big in the last 5 years, right, they were being contrarian to this, right? Because they went back to the brand route because no one else was doing brand, right? And if you think about Slack, the year they launched, they were running TV ads in the US, right? Or even like Gong has a crazy following. Drift and HubSpot did a lot of brand work, although HubSpot was more in the SEO bucket, but Drift was very good on the brand aspects. But I think the best people, including like even you are a brand guy, we have the Rocket Lane folks, so they've done a phenomenal job of building brand, right? So I think it's a matter of being contrarian, number one. Uh, and when the world is moving towards performance, doing brand makes you different and makes you stand out, right? The second one on finding channels early, I think, is again, real example for me, right, is when Medium came up, there were people who exploited Medium as a channel, right? Jason Lemkin built SaaSter on the strength of Quora, right? That's where they built their initial distribution, right? If you look at, and we are doing a podcast, right? It was probably easier to launch a podcast 5, 6 years back when it was new, right? Today, people have selected what they want to watch, and it's harder to launch a podcast today, right? So always ask yourself, what is the next place your audience is hanging out, right? And when I say hanging out, it means they're looking for knowledge or looking for inspiration or interacting with their peers. But what is that next place to go, right? So I would I would egg founders on this point that figure out what is going to be that distribution edge and distribution motion, right? And hiring an SDR and spending on Google ads is not the differentiator. It is more like an insurance policy. You are doing it, so is everyone else, but that is not helping you build an edge, right? So the edge will really come from somewhere else, right? And this will help you capture and fulfill that demand, but that demand is not created from uh, just performance marketing alone, right? And if I have to think about recent examples for us, right, you are obviously in the brand bucket. That's your strength. Rocket Lane did very successfully on community because they understood that no one had built a community for their audience, right, for onboarding and implementation professionals. Murph is a portfolio company who's doing very well on the SEO front. uh, Similarly, PLG is becoming popular because product growth loops help you spread, right? And that's another thing to try out. But I think there has to be a non-standard distribution edge. And probably these are some of the ways that recent companies have differentiated.
That helps. So I'm going to take a step back again. I think we skipped one of your most important things. See, Freshworks started as a SMB first inside sales, typical model where they'd come try the product and close it from India. And then later, if you see, it grew into a mid-market enterprise engine where global company where we had sales and pre-sales across the globe, offices across, and then we were able to bring bigger deals and everything, right? So the twin engine model. So I just want to, like, you have been in the front seat executing and working in both these engine, and so I want to like take a moment and want you to talk about the difference in approach, especially when you saw both these engine and challenges which you want to like bring it out so that audience can uh, take some tips out of it.
No, definitely. I think first thing I'll say is we are privileged to know what we know because so many things have to go right to get to 500, 600, 700 million revenue, multiple products, multiple go-to-market motions were firing. And I think that journey was incredible. Right now, if you think about, and this is where I think Girish was always ahead in terms of thinking about next way to find non-linear growth. But when Freshworks was working, right, during 1 to 5 million journey, he had already thought of, okay, the next product has to come up, right, which will, as the first product slows down and matures, the second product gives us growth. So when we were at 5 million, we actually launched Fresh Service. Similarly, we were selling to SMB, right? And in SMB, the problem is churn because people simply go out of business and don't have ability to pay. So your new business and churn, eventually they start catching up and SMB growth slows down. So he said the next unlock has to be we sell to mid-market. So it's a new GTM motion which gets us into a new market. So we grow faster and they are obviously stickier customer, churn is lower, you can get larger ACVs, more expansion, etc. So that was the second way to grow, right? And I'll talk about all the experiments and what we learned along the way. The third one was sort of this channel and reseller motion to get us access to new markets, right? So we were going after new segments, we were going after new geographies, we were launching new products. All together led to the growth numbers that we put up on the board, right? And making all of them work was obviously hard, and which is why I said that, like, it's awesome that all of it worked and it came together to create this result, right? So I think we decided that we'll try this upmarket motion in 2014, right? And in May 2014, the idea was, okay, selling to enterprise or mid enterprise in our definition was you hire AEs in region, hire sales reps, they will go open doors and sell to these companies, usually from a Rolodex, right? And so we hired two reps in like US, UK, Australia, all of that, and said, okay, these people can go and sell, right? And did not work that way, right? And our DNA was SMB, digital demand, help them onboard, swipe the credit card, drop them into the hands of support, right? That was the DNA at the time. So these people could not sell, right? Now we tried to figure out why. So first thing was they were not confident of going and presenting the product. So he said, okay, our India pre-sales team is strong. Let's send one person to each geo so that they can actually present the product and go along and attend the meetings, right? The second thing that happened was, I guess Simon in the UK said, let me talk to 10 customers, right? And some of them were really pissed off that, hey, where have you been for the last 4 years? We are about to churn. No one has been talking to us. So we realized the importance that of customer success, right? Because we were SMB, we were high velocity and a little transactional. We were not giving them proactive support and not showing them love after the sale was made, right? So we learned that we have to hire a customer success team, right? And we did that in 2015. Probably 4 years too late, right? We were building it 4 years after we launched the product, right? So customer success came. Then all these reps were struggling for pipeline, right? So we realized that obviously building pipeline is a different skill, closing pipeline is a different skill, right? So we switched our mental model from hiring field sales to having a minimum viable team in every region, which meant you have one field marketer, you have a couple of SDRs, you have a couple of sales reps, you have pre-sales, you have customer success, right? So 7 to 8 people in that region, and that full stack team can then execute, right? And obviously we have the support structure in India to enable them, right? So we did that, right? Now, after that change, we focused on analyst relations and field marketing events and all of that. We started getting some pipeline, right? But then we lost the first few deals, right? So what all happened? I guess one customer in Europe actually came back to us after a year of signing the contract and said, we are not confident we want to go live, right? And they actually paid the implementation fees. Now, it was a bad customer for us because it was way too enterprise, but we also learned the importance of having an implementation team. So, meaning obviously it was too far ahead for us, right? It wasn't in that mid-enterprise bucket, but they actually paid to walk away from the contract. They paid the implementation fees, but we realized the importance of running a strong implementation process, right? So we knew we had to build an implementation team, right? Same way, there were two companies in the US, Netflix and Tesla, where we were shortlisted for something again back in 2015, 2016 or thereabouts. and we didn't have infosec compliances, which is why they didn't buy from us. So we realized that we need a CISO. So you need to strengthen on legal, infosec, implementation, all the pieces in the middle to handhold that enterprise, right, from first meeting to actually getting them successful in using the product, right? So that happened. Third one is, again, some places our India DNA crops up, but anytime a customer would say, what is your implementation process and playbook, we would say free implementation, we'll do what you want. So that's what in India, saying that gives us comfort that, okay, this guy will help us. In the US and in Europe, the interpretation was that free implementations means we'll have to implement it ourselves, or we'll have to find someone who can do it for us, right? So we learned, then we changed it where, if you give them a quote which says implementation $50,000, special one-time discount to zero, it still gives them confidence that, okay, there is a process and playbook, which is why you are charging for it. And then you present a statement of work or give them a guidebook which says that these are the things we'll do, right? Configuration, integration, data migration,
Culture.
some team training and
Really
all of
wide
that.
culture. See, in India, right, we don't charge anything for people. In US, people cost is higher, even for the janitor cost. $50 per month for twice they clean the apartment. The cost of people is higher there. We always take people cost for granted. Implementation, we will take care of it. We'll do it. I think it's a culture. You rightly said it's a cultural thing. Uh, the implementation of cost gives you some kind of assurance. I won't say trust, assurance for the company to take it seriously. It was very important for us in mid market and enterprise.
And once I asked a CIO, if I charge you 250K implementation, will you pay? Right? And he said, for me, the cost of failure is far higher. If I sign $1 million contract and the product doesn't work for us, that is a problem. Business continuity is a problem. If we have downtime, that's an issue. He said, I'll happily pay for implementation, which is again the insurance policy to make sure the product is successful within. Right? And charging for that means you are delivering a high quality service, and it gives that person confidence that you will actually deliver, right? So I think that was another
I'll
interesting
tell you one
learning
interesting
over
thing
there.
which I did. I will not mention which company I did this with, which company I was with back then. I had to just add a zero extra for implementation cost for the deal to go through. I'm not even joking. I had put implementation cost as 30K. Literally, I was asked to put another zero next to it so that the deal is taken seriously to go through. So that's the kind of like mindset we had to switch from SMB to.
No, I think India founders are also afraid to price product to that baseline, right? We are used to leaving money on the table, right? And sometimes I would say early stage, just experiment with proposals, and it doesn't mean increase price by 10 and 20%. It means put 50% more, 100% more. The moment you see discomfort in the customer's eyes, then you know you are in the right range and you can reduce it a little.
Absolutely. So I'll again get into the tactics, right? So like you have increased the year-on-year growth to almost 150% during your enterprise stint, like mid-market enterprise stint. I want to double click a little bit on tactics because the reason why I'm saying tactics again, methods which you have learned, right? See, the one of the reasons we see is there's a lot of mistakes we did. A lot of things worked, a lot of things didn't work. I think uh, we are in that stage as a country, as a SaaSBoomi, as a country, where we want to see like what worked, what didn't work, and especially in your journey. And we want to talk about a couple of campaigns which you thought would be really helpful for us. Like I would want to bring up this one campaign. I specifically remember when we tried this outbound engine and we were trying to do calls and mailers and things like that. But you did something very interesting with experience campaign that I think it's Experience IT or
The roadshow.
yeah, the Experience Roadshow campaign. It kind of created a lot of buzz during the time, and we worked like just want to understand what went behind the scenes. Like how did you come up with the campaign and like what was the thought process?
No, so I think, again, good example. And a lot of the work behind it came from our European marketing team. So can't take credit for that. But I think, see, one big learning is like everyone tries to come up with new and different messages, right? That every month, hey, I'm launching a new product feature set. Let me change the message, that I need to keep it fresh. The reality is you need to keep the messaging consistent, right? We know HubSpot for inbound marketing because they parroted the same message for 10 plus years, right? And it is just about consistency and repetition, right? You repeat the same message in new and interesting ways over the long term, and that creates a memorable and differentiated position in the market, right? So I think we also were in that habit of changing message every month, every quarter, and that is actually bad because people don't remember you for anything, right? So I think biggest learning for us was we used to do monthly campaigns. We shifted to doing campaigns which are 6 months and 12 months.
The art that, and even every product will have their own messaging, and we have to bring it back to the brand also.
So I think biggest one was that messaging is long-term consistent, right? And your campaigns are interesting ways to promote the same message, right? Now over here, given, okay, we had done Experience Roadshow under the Freshworks umbrella, right? But we were still thinking, given the term is experience, that how do we bring that out and actually create a very good experience, right? And it was a vanilla field event series at the end of the day. But the idea was, how do we amp it up and create something memorable that people remember us by, right? So, and obviously the team came up with the idea of, let's have one of those old VW camper vans, right? So we got one of the vans, right? And given the theme was roadshow, it was in Europe. We said, let's hit 11 cities across Europe. It's a roadshow, so let the van be the sort of that one piece of marketing material which repeats everywhere, right? So we actually bought a second-hand van, painted it in the colors of that whatever event theme and all of that. The van was named Friday. The van had a name, and Freshworks still owns the van, by the way. Then the idea was, okay, Experience Roadshow, because it's Roadshow, there's a van, right? Now the van was on the website on the landing page. We had the real van which would drive around. So for social media promotions, we will park it in front of, like, say, if you're doing Paris, put it in front of the Eiffel Tower, take a picture and put it up, right? If you've seen the movie Chef, they also do this, right? The social media thing. And the van is also at the physical event venues. Actually, many places it was inside the event venue, right? So it was sort of just creating that continuity, right? So digital demand, social media, we were also every place we were doing some charitable activity where the van will pick up some stuff and go donate it to an NGO or non-profit or to people and all of that. So we were showing the van in multiple places and it was branded with our colors, right? And wherever you park it, people will know where our event is, right? So I think that sort of linked. So it was going to be 11 events. This entire thematic representation brought the entire thing together into one campaign, right? It moves from being an event or a tactical campaign in a tactic activity in one silo to actually becoming something bigger, right? So that was one very cool thing, right? The second thing, when we thought of the experience, we said people are bored of the same old conferences in some boring hotel and the buffet spread menu and all of that. It's just very dead and it doesn't have energy, right? And you did your event in Tobacco Dock, London, so you also know this. But we said, let's find non-standard venues, right? So our event in London was at the zoo. And in between, like the event was at this conference space at London Zoo. In between, you gave people 30 minutes to walk around the zoo, see the animals and come back. It was nice and different, right? Same way, the event in Manchester was actually in a photo studio. So, like it was like this nice, like double story high with like skylights, lot of natural light flowing in, or like white backdrop and all. When people were walking in, they were looking around and saying, okay, this is interesting. This is different, right? So even the locations we picked were very non-standard locations, right? And in that photo studio, we actually parked the van in front. So it was the backdrop for all the speakers who were sitting on stage and talking, right? And you have like these high skylights with natural light streaming in. It was like a beautiful space, right? So venue selection was very different, right? Then just to get energy in the room, and we said, let's showcase our Indian roots, right? So we had this drum and whole band coming in and playing. So they traveled to the 11 locations with us. So we had these Punjabi dhol players who would come in and play. And again, it's just bringing a lot of energy, right? We had one guest sort of Indian chef who's again a popular figure who had done a curated Indian food menu for us. And she was again traveling everywhere and handling all the food, right? So he said, let's bring India out to the forefront. Let's create an experience that people remember, right? So people are coming for the conversation, but they'll remember your brand because of the experience.
That's exactly the point. See here, when you break it down into tactics, just for the audience as a marketer, what I'm trying to do here is, see, there is an identity, there is a recall. Like it's an Indian brand, we are proud, we proudly own.
And we had that Indian democratic design book, right? So we had hard
Exactly.
copies of the book which we were giving out, right?
Yeah.
So
So there is a recall, and most importantly, to stand out, we have given that experience because, like, we are not doing the same old things. Like for the earlier point, what you said, we need to think out of the box. Like in Freshworks, what we say is smart TOC, right? Right. We basically gave that experience to them, and this kind of falls into our brand, leaves an emotion. When they think about the brand, the emotion, what they think about, and what, like, whenever you think about Tata, there's a different emotion you feel. If it's Reliance, that's a different emotion which comes to your mind. So these activities kind of tell you what kind of company you are doing business with, and the brand emotion, which you can't put it in words, is what this is. That experience. I think that campaign brilliantly gave that experience what Freshworks company is. So I think that achieved it, and the recall value was given. So, awesome.
actually, on that point, I'll also share one more thing, right? Like people always ask, like, how do you measure the ROI of these things, right? Even our friends of at Rocket Lane, when they did the Series A announcement, they launched that rap video, right? It was a rap video about customer onboarding. Now you'll say, okay, why even do this, right? That there is no downside, so publish, right? But there were people who saw that video and were signing up, right? And there's like she has one automated email which goes out that, hey, before the meeting, can you share context of what you are looking for so we can help you better? And one customer actually put a quote. They have this line in that, send Asana back to yoga class. So he actually quoted that in his email and said, that is it, I want to buy, right? So even for people, what comes across is, hey, as a company, we are more than just a vendor. We are passionate about this particular mission and we are very excited to solve these problems, right? And that it's that emotion which comes out, right? That it's much more than just a company, that these are people you really want to end up working with.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. These campaigns, again, as I said, uh, you try 10 things, and these kind of campaigns, some will actually become viral, and it will take you places. Like it's going to make people remember you for that. So I can't agree with you more on that. So deeper into your last point, which you made about building products in this era, right? Like that the cost of customer acquisition has gone up, and it's crowded. Standing out is important. That's been the whole theme of this podcast so far. So as an investor, right? Like we have always been focusing on product market fit. Okay, and product market fit again is a loosely used word. Different people have different definitions. Even today, we can say hitting $1 million revenue. We can't say they have hit product market fit because there's different definitions for different companies and the way they do it. I want to focus a little bit on the business market fit. Like as an investor, like what indicators do you look for in a business for product market fit and for business market fit, and which stage do you look for it, and like how important it is?
No, so I think again, answer might be different for different people, right? So when I think of applications as, right, like more business applications, it is going to be where, your initial product has to be good, and obviously good product is table stakes, right? But in the long term, everyone has like parity product plus minus 5-10%, right? Some modules will be ahead, some module the competitor will be ahead. So then that distribution model and edge on distribution becomes far more important to determine how big you can become, right? And so over there, I think it's important. Different founders think of it at different times. I think the best founders think of it at day zero and start running those experiments, right? And again, if you look at, I guess, Freshworks itself, Girish's first blog was written, I think it's 13th October 2010, right? The product was launched in July 2011, right? But he was writing about his story and writing articles on Hacker News and all of that, because the day they launched, they had a waitlist of 500 people and got to 100 customers in 100 days, right? Similarly, if I think of Rocket Lane, so she started the community before they started writing code almost. And the day they launched, the community had 1,200 people. So who have been engaging with you over a year, right? So then it's almost like these people know you, they are excited to work with you, they are waiting to get the product in their hands, and that gives you a fast start, right? And this brand marketing also compounds with time. So the earlier you start, the better it gets, right? So I think the best people invest in it early, right? And in fact, even our US team tells us that Indian founders focus on substance over style, right? That we have an engineering and product mindset, so we build a lot of product, right? US founders almost focused on style first, substance comes later, right? So they'll first blow off $1 million on brand development and brand marketing and like good design, good UX, right? So everything is like that spit, shine, polish, whatever you call it. And then the product comes later, right? But they're building hype brands that people want to work with first, right? So they're almost building that distribution muscle early. And I know building, you have to play to your strength. So keep building the product, but start thinking about this early, right? And the more experiments, see, even when it comes to Freshworks figuring out mid enterprise, I think we took 4 years to get it right? So those iterative cycles, the earlier you start, the smarter you get about that market and that distribution model and flywheel for your business. So I would say think of it on day zero.
No, I think, as you rightly said, we also comes culturally. We are very, very conservative. We have been raised saying that don't go and package things, right? We have always been raised like that. So what which brings me to this thing, like we ship the feature, it's live, then we make an announcement. The way West does it is they announce it, makes PR, and then they start building the feature.
Yeah, you'll announce it and say put it in early access, and GA, like general availability, will be 2 years later, right? But when you announce it, it's like launching a landing page with a keep me posted button, right? But that will tell you how excited people are by it. Is the message resonating or not, right? So those experiments can always start earlier.
No, I think that's the conservative mindset. We need to come out of it, and we, as you said, we need to come to the thinking of a lot of things from day one, like not just building the product, shipping the feature.
See, in fact, in terms of this, I think like founders have to become students of sales, right? So I'll take Rishi and Samir of Rev. I'll take their example. I hope this is okay, Rishi. But they basically, when they were debating two ideas. One was a sales content repository. The other one was a CPQ, like quoting system. They took a one-day booth at SaaSter, which was some $5,000 or $10,000 at the time. This is before, like it was almost before that started building, right? And they put up two like pseudo landing pages on two laptops, and they were A/B testing the message live at SaaSter at a booth, right? At that time, the company was called Austin Monks. So Austin Monks had a one-day booth at SaaSter because they were basically collecting market feedback at the conference, right? And then they kind of picked what to build, how to message, etc. But that is so much feedback, right? Because if you go there even for a day, you are interacting with 50 or 100 sales reps, right? And you're having those live conversations. It can teach you so much, right? So I would say even get on a plane, attend a conference, talk to 50 people over there and come back. Far more effective in terms of those learning cycles of what are the real precise pain points, how do you market and message around it, how can you think about distribution. I think it can come
No, I
earlier.
think it's better to check it, then invest some time before you code than taking a wrong direction. And because startups don't run out of money, they run out of time. So I believe, I'm a strong believer in that. Awesome. So this is again from India investor perspective. Like, what do you think we as an Indian SaaS company founders have a tactical advantage over the West now? Like, definitely, I'm not going to talk about cost and everything because today building a product is as expensive affair like how it is to be in the West. Like, what do you think now as an India SaaS ecosystem has advantage over the West?
No, so I think two, three things, right? One is obviously, see, building a new startup in the valley is hard because even if you raise a seed round and all, hire your first 10 engineers, you'll run out of money in 18 months, right? So you'll have 12 to 18 months runway. In that time, you either grow or you shut down, right? So at least when you do it over here, you can iterate into PMF, right? Think of it as you get 3 years and three shots of at goal, right? Because hiring is still cheaper and you can always sort of build the first version, ship it, and then iterate to PMS. So I think you still get multiple shots at goal, and that helps, right? Because sometimes you can also reject ideas too fast, which might be happening in the US. But if you keep at it for longer and you have persistent, gritty founders, you can still find PMF, right? So I think the cost structure still plays into our favor, even at the earliest stage, right? And Freshworks happened in India, Canva in Australia, like Stripe in Ireland. I think a lot of companies in the last few years have been built outside the valley, and they all shift to the valley later, right? And I think Slack was in Canada. So uh, I think the cost structure benefit is still very real, even at the earliest stages, right? It just gives you more time to experiment and find your footing, right? But I think two other changes, right? One is I think it's good that we have, even on the developer side, because India has seen the last 12 years of startup hypergrowth story, a lot of developers have seen the problems with hypergrowth and are coming out and building, right? In the same way, uh, so I think a lot of people who have seen 10,000 hours in a particular domain experience the pain points themselves and are building to solve their pain. It is good because they understand the domain and the customer problem deeply. It's also good because it gives you a reason to build, right? If you have to commit 10 years of your life to building it, if it's your pain point, it's just easier to commit, right? So I think the founder mix is changing towards experienced, right? The second thing is we have a very strong bench of people on the GTM side, right? Whether it's marketing, sales, customer success, support, etc. But people who have seen this journey before, right? At the 20 plus SaaS unicorns that we have in India. So I think that everything that we learned from zero about how to build, like how to launch in the US, how to scale and get from 1 to 10 and 10 to 100, I think that knowledge is more commonly available today than it was earlier, right? We would hire smart people and expect them to learn, right? And then you have to have the patience to give them room to fail, learn, and grow, right? Today you can hire some amount of been there done that talent who can help you get there faster, right? So I think that talent pool is tilting in our favor and it will continue to happen, right? uh, I think third thing, which is a big change, is as engineering becomes expensive in India also, right? And it's hard to recruit developers and salaries are higher. I think more India companies are becoming buyers of SaaS product, right? So earlier in that build versus buy, everyone will say, I'll put two people and build it myself, right? Today, a lot of Indian companies across SaaS, B2B, like consumer, fintech, etc., are buying world-class SaaS product, right? So in terms of finding your PMF, today it's possible to sell to 5 to 10 people in India. You know them well, they are in the same time zone. So you'll just get a faster feedback loop and you can iterate to PMF and then have your GTM and marketing focus on the US and then sell over there, right? So I think that cycle of finding PMF, even for India SaaS companies, is getting faster. The first set of companies, Freshworks was more an exception, but everyone took like 5-6 years to hit their first $1 million revenue, right? I think these days companies in India are faster out of the gates because that they have those anchor customers over here that are helping them build the right product.
No, absolutely. I think that's a very interesting point on build versus buy. A lot of companies, the mindset have changed and they want to buy rather than so. And getting to product market fit with this echo chamber is also a good way of good advantage we have as an Indian company, and it's great. All right, Pranay, you are ready for the rapid fire round.
No, I'm not going to be ready, but let's go ahead.
What is your biggest marketing pet peeve?
Get rid of the fast and furious terms, and my team will laugh about this. But people have the turbocharge and nitro boost, and But I think just keep it simple, write like you speak. Because again, marketing to the US, you need a different type of language.
Okay, so What is the one thing you wish founders knew when they pitch to you or any investors? Like something you always would have thought about this.
No, so I think what matters most is actually uh, just being obsessed about the customer first, right? So, how many people have you talked to? What is the nuanced and unique insight you learned from all of them? And how have you consumed that knowledge to build a specific plan for yourself, right? So, I think just that customer obsession is super important because, when people will put a top down TAM slide, right, that is not interesting, right? Because that is like a very consulting approach. But it's actually more about like, okay, what is the bottom up, like underserved piece of the market? What is your initial wedge? Who are you going to sell to? That becomes far more important, right? So I think just showcasing that customer obsession and actually doing that work early is very important. And we love to meet founders who are obsessed with the customer, right? Because it will show up in the product depth, it will show up in the GTM motion. That customer understanding comes out everywhere.
Awesome. Okay, so simpler one. Which is your most favorite book which you have read so far, which you can recommend to the founders?
I think it's an interesting one because I've not really thought about it. But I liked, in terms of thought process, and probably Creativity Inc., which is the book about Disney.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so controversial one. One thing or one campaign which you'd want to change in your Freshworks stint can be yours or anybody's.
You're not going to like my answer, Arvind.
It's a
No, so actually, and I've thought quite a lot about this, right? So the Salesforce one that we did, right? And I'll tell you what I was thinking about, right? And like I've not thought through what is a better way to do it, right? But we would always pick a fight with the leader, right? Now, when I think about it, it obviously has pros and cons, right? That and feedback would be a little mix. That some people like it, some people don't like it, right? It creates controversy, gets you noticed. Uh, so obviously, the attention you get is good, but the attention is also mixed, right? Some other people, when I see them do something similar, they don't pick a fight with the competitor; they pick on a problem, right? Which is a customer problem. I think it's just a nicer approach. So you are not putting anyone down, but you are picking a problem which everyone resonates with, right? Like even if I think about Slack, and they probably never brought it out in creative ways, but they didn't say that we are going after any other company. They said we are the email killer, and everyone hates the amount of internal email you get. Right. Same way, if I were thinking of productivity, like everyone hates attending meetings in companies. Right. So if you create something where meetings is the enemy, it's okay. Right. If you make Calendly the enemy or Zoom the enemy, it's sort of still mixed because a lot of people will love those products. Right. So I was just thinking about, we take issue with problems in people's lives versus take issue with competitors. But yeah, something to think about. Yeah, there's no right answer. So all media is good media. Yeah.
So marketing, there is no good to it, but definitely I agree to your approach. But I also see a lot of companies trying to do this gate crashing campaign. One thing I would want to also tell us, like, gate crashing campaign should be a little bit more thought through on all the repercussions and who you're attending, what could be the outcome. We should not just do it for the sake of doing it. I see a lot of those campaigns happening of late, so that could be one pointer. All right, so last question is, one piece of advice for people during starting a company right now, post pandemic, now recession time. What would be your one piece of advice?
So I think, see, genuinely, in some way, it puts us at an advantage, right? Because if people are, again, preparing for a recession, more conservative about hiring and all of that, right? You can definitely play to cost, right? And maybe cost is not the right term, maybe it's ROI, but just I think earlier people were chasing growth, now they are chasing efficiency, right? So the positioning of your company has to be more geared towards efficiency, right? So I think that's a big change, and obviously, if you can do something around it, displace the premium priced market leaders, all of that, I think that might be a good way to get foot in the door, right? Uh, so I think that is probably the major one, right? Given the macro in the coming 1 or 2 years, right? The other big thing you'll notice is a lot of people will want to consolidate vendors, right? Because if I'm looking at cost efficiency, I'll say instead of buying 5 different tools, or can I buy everything from one person and as a package I get a better price? So that actually tilts favor back in favor of the more mature companies. So you'll just have to think through uh, that entire dynamic.
Awesome. Awesome, Pranay. It was really great hosting you in the SaaSBoomi podcast. Hopefully, we'll be able to get you and few more folks from the Freshworks Mafia into the uh, GTM podcast BTS season 2 version. So, thank you. You are a wonderful guest. And for all the listeners, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also, if you have any feedback, please share it at hello@saasboomi.com. Thank you so much. And looking forward for the next one.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Arvind.